Welcome, everyone. There are certain figures in history who just feel huge. Their names just echo, don't they? Their influence is, well, almost immeasurable. Today, we're doing a deep dive into one of those titans, William Shakespeare. Generally seen as, the greatest writer in English, maybe the world's finest playwright. So our goal here is to sift through all the scholarly work, all the history, and pull out the really key stuff. Give you a kind of shortcut to being genuinely well-informed about the bard.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start in Stratford-upon-Avon, nice market town. That's where he was born, April 1564. Though it's funny, we celebrate his birthday on April 23rd, but that's actually just tradition. His real birth date, unknown. We only know he was baptized on April 26th.
Right. And what's fascinating, I think, about his early days, even with the missing details, is the family setup. He was the third of 8 kids. His father, John Shakespeare, was a glovemaker, pretty successful, actually, an alderman, too. And his mother, Mary Arden, came from the local gentry. So it wasn't, a poverty-stricken start.
No, it suggests a fairly solid, respectable family, which likely meant access to, well, a decent life and probably education. It kind of hints at a background where commerce, civic duty, these things were understood. You see that reflected later in his plays, I think.
That makes sense. A solid footing. And yeah, it's interesting how those early bits might subtly shape, his whole worldview later on.
So, about that education, we don't have school records, right? But the common thinking is he went to the local grammar school.
That's the general belief, yeah.
And that would have been quite intense. Lots of Latin, classical literature, that sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely rigorous. Latin grammar, rhetoric, reading the Roman playwrights like Plautus and Terence, Ovid. This wasn't light reading. That kind of classical grounding would have been, fundamental. It gave him the tools, the structures, the themes that he'd later just completely transform.
So it's not just learning old stories, it's learning how stories work, how language persuades. Precisely. You see it in how complex his sentences can be, how he plays with structure, the classical echoes, and of course, somewhere in this period, around 18, he marries Anne Hathaway.
Right, older woman.
8 years older, yes. And they had 3 children fairly quickly. Susanna, and then the twins, Hamnet and Judith.
But Stratford life, even with a family and that education, obviously wasn't the end of the story. It's the move to London. Late 1580s, maybe early 1590s. That's when things really shift gear, isn't it? Here's where it gets really interesting.
Exactly. London's where he explodes onto the scene.
Yeah.
And not just as a writer initially. He was doing several things at once. He was an actor, so he understood the stage from the performer's side. Vitally important.
Practical experience.
Absolutely. He was writing plays, obviously, but, and this is key, he was also a shareholder, a part owner in his playing company. First known as the Lord Chamberlain's Men, and then later, under King James, they became the King's Men.
So he had skin in the game, financially.
Totally. Yeah. It wasn't just art for art's sake, though the art was supreme. It was also a business. His success was tied to the company's success. That probably focused the mind,
Yeah, I can imagine. A direct line between writing a hit and, getting paid.
Very direct line.
And you see that energy, that sort of drive in his early work. Things like the Henry VI plays or Titus Andronicus.
You do. You see him learning his craft, experimenting. Titus is famously bloody, very different from his later tragedies, but you see the dramatic power already. The history plays show his interest in politics, power.
He's figuring it out in public, basically.
In a way, yes, on the very public London stage.
And once he gets going in London, the sheer volume of work is just staggering. What is it, 39 plays that we know of?
That's the accepted number, yeah.
Plus 154 sonnets, and those 2 long poems, Venus and Adonis and The Rape of Lucrece.
It's an incredible output over maybe, 20 years or so.
How does someone even do that? What does it say about him? Or maybe the theatrical world back then, was there just a constant demand for new stuff?
There absolutely was a demand. The playing companies needed new material constantly to keep audiences coming back. But still, his level of production and the quality, it's exceptional. And this raises an important question. How did one writer achieve such mastery across so many genres?
Right. Because he wasn't just doing one thing.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You've got the great tragedies, Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, Macbeth, these huge explorations of, human suffering, ambition, jealousy.
Real heavy hitters.
Definitely. Then you swing over to the comedies, A Midsummer Night's Dream, Twelfth Night, as you like it.
Yeah.
So much wit, romance, confusion, often quite funny.
Yeah, genuinely funny plays.
And then the histories, Richard III, Henry V, Henry IV, dramatizing English history, but also exploring leadership, Legitimacy, the burden of rule.
The range is just vast.
It tells you he was an amazing observer of everything. Politics, love, war, family squabbles, magic. He saw the drama in all of it.
And it comes back to that combination, doesn't it? The deep understanding of people, all their flaws and feelings,
Yeah.
combined with this unbelievable skill with the English language.
Absolutely unparalleled.
I mean, think about the soliloquies. To be or not to be, it's like he just cracked open the human mind on stage. You feel like you're inside Hamlet's head.
Exactly. That psychological realism, even within poetic verse, was revolutionary. And it still grabs you today.
Okay, so his plays are amazing, but his impact goes even further, right? Into the language itself.
Oh, massively. It's hard to overstate it.
Yeah.
So many words and phrases we use every single day.
Give us some examples.
Well, things like break the ice, all that glitters is not gold, wild goose chase, heart of gold, in a peckle. The list is enormous. He either coined them or was the first to write them down, popularizing them.
Wow, so we're basically quoting Shakespeare all the time without knowing it.
Pretty much,
Yeah.
yeah. He didn't just use the language, he actively shaped it, expanded its vocabulary, its expressive power.
And that power clearly travels, because his work isn't just stuck in English, is it?
Not at all. What's fascinating here is how his words transcend time and borders. His plays are translated into, well, pretty much every major language.
Yeah.
And are performed constantly, everywhere. More than any other playwright, period.
Why do you think that is? What makes them resonate in, say, Japan or Brazil centuries later?
I think it's the universality of the themes. Love, jealousy, ambition, betrayal, power, justice, mercy. These are human constants, aren't they?
Yeah.
He dresses them in Elizabethan clothes, sure, but the core conflicts, the emotional truths, they're timeless. He tapped into something fundamental about being human.
So it's not just English history or culture, it's the human condition.
Exactly. That's the key to his global reach, I believe.
And that legacy, it's not just in theaters anymore, as it pops up everywhere.
Oh, absolutely. Film adaptations are countless, obviously, from faithful versions to, modern high school settings like 10 Things I Hate About You,
Right.
based on Taming of the Shrew.
Right.
Novels retell his stories, musicians are inspired by him, opera, ballet. His fingerprints are all over Western culture and increasingly global culture, too.
So after this incredible burst of creativity in London, what happens? Does he just keep going forever? Well, no. Eventually, he seems to have sort of semi-retired. He spent more time back in Stratford in his later years, bought a big house there, new place.
Right, he'd become quite wealthy through his theater work and investments.
He was still involved, writing some later plays, collaborating maybe, revising things. But the pace seems to slow down a bit.
Winding down, perhaps.
And then he dies in Stratford on April 23rd, 1616, which is, coincidentally, the same date as his traditional birthday.
A neat, if possibly coincidental, symmetry.
He's buried in the Holy Trinity Church there, and there's that famous epitaph on his tomb warning people not to move his bones.
Good friend, for Jesus' sake, forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Yeah, it's quite striking. Add the bit of mystery. Possibly self-penned, as you say.
A final dramatic touch. But his death wasn't the end of the story for his plays, was it? Because not everything had been published.
No, and this is absolutely crucial. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the first folio is arguably as vital to his legacy as his plays themselves.
Okay, tell us about the first folio.
It was published 7 years after his death in 1623. Two of his friends and fellow actors from the King's Men, John Hemingway and Henry Condell, gathered his plays together. Many of the plays, about half, actually, including major ones like Macbeth, Twelfth Night, Julius Caesar, As You Like It, had never been printed before in reliable versions, or at all.
So without this book,
We might have lost them forever. They might have just disappeared, like so many other plays from that era did.
Yeah.
The first folio essentially saved a huge chunk of Shakespeare's known work for us.
wow, that's incredible. So Hemingway and Condell are kind of unsung heroes here.
Absolutely. Their dedication preserved this monumental legacy. It's hard to imagine world literature without those plays.
It really is, and it just highlights how fragile cultural memory can be and how important preservation is. So all this effort, by him, by his friends, it ensures that his insights, his language, his understanding of people, it all keeps echoing, doesn't it? Still challenging us, still inspiring people. So what does this all mean for you as a learner? We've journeyed from Stratford streets, through the chaos and energy of the London stage, right up to his, well, monumental global status today.
I think it really prompts you to think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How does someone whose early life is so relatively undocumented become this colossal figure? His deep, deep understanding of human nature, of society, the sheer power of his language. It just resonates across centuries. It proves that real insight, real genius, it's timeless, it speaks beyond the specific biography.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. We know so little about him, the man, compared to, say, other historical figures, yet his work feels so incredibly known, so deeply felt. Maybe that's the ultimate provocative thought. Given how few personal details we have, what does it tell us about the power of the words themselves, that his legacy is so huge, so celebrated? Maybe the work is the biography that matters most, what stands out to you most from this deep dive into Shakespeare.